So you already have a product, a key product, Colombian origin or any origin. You already have a target market where you want to export your product, and you have enough infrastructure to produce the product in enough volume to export it. That's perfect. But it doesn't just end up right there. There's a series of regulations, there's a series of standards, international standards, and governmental restrictions that can either facilitate or hinder the market entry of your product to any of the countries you're wanting to export it to. Here, Santiago Urrego, me, and Jacobo Mesa as a moderator, and I as a strategic advisor of the No Nonsense Trade podcast, we're going to be going a little deeper into these details so you can avoid headaches and how to deal with this kind of regulations and standards and what should do and what should avoid.
Okay, so hi, my name, as mentioned before, is Jacobo Mesa, and today we're going to be discussing these different barriers with my colleague Santiago. What is your product, first of all?
Well, the product that I have been researching and working with is exactly coffee infused spirits. Getting more deeper into it is vodka with a 12% infusion of Arabica coffee and rum with 18% infusion of Robusta beans coffee. It's 100% Colombian origin, exported to the United Kingdom.
Okay, so in my case, my product, that one I have been researching, has been Colombian Lush perfumes made from Liang Liang, which is a flower from India of 40% sugarcane or from sugarcane alcohol that comes from Meta, and hibiscus petals that come from Valle del Cauca. Okay, so starting off all, let's state a problem. Santiago, what do you think is, first of all, let's state what are non-tariff barriers, the difference from barriers, and what do you think about them?
Okay, so it is extremely important to make a difference between tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. For example, tariff barriers are, let's say, quantitative restrictions that can be put to a product when exporting it to another market. For example, let's talk about the coffee infused spirits. For example, from Colombia to the United Kingdom, there's an MFN or a most favored nation, which is like the bound tariff for all nations that want to export to the United Kingdom. The most favored nation for this case, in case of the vodka especially, is 0%, which means that any WTO member country that wants to export vodka to the United Kingdom has a tariff barrier of 0%. Now, if we're talking about the rum, it goes in at 2.37%. So that will be a tariff barrier. Now, what are the non-tariff barriers? Those are the ones that make bureaucratic process, such as certifications, labels, or registrations that the company that is going to export or that the product needs to have. And also, there are some private standards that can either facilitate or even hinder the market entry of the product. So there's a little bit more going deeper into non-tariff barriers, because tariff barriers are generally tariffs and that's it. Those are the barriers. Now, talking into non-tariff barriers, it goes a little bit deeper, it gets a little bit more complex, but depending in the product. This is the case for the coffee infused spirits.
Yes, I actually think that's something very interesting because, for example, the WTO, which is the organism that overlooks trade, in the recent years has been much more focused in overcoming non-tariff barriers over tariff barriers, because tariffs, obviously, I think that everyone is updated with what Trump has been doing. That is something that really is seen from the past. Tariffs are more of something like quantitative to, in most cases, like protect certain industries of certain markets. But quantitative barriers is something that has been on the decrease in the last few years. So yeah, I think that even like just because you don't see like a staple price for a tariff, it doesn't mean that it's more harmful. A non-tariff barrier can be more harmful than a normal tariff, and I think that is something very important to have in mind when you're exporting a product. Now, talking about the product I have been researching, you will see that for perfumes, it also varies. The non-tariff barriers is much lower. First of all, the MFN is also 0%, meaning that no tariffs will be applied upon entry. But also, going on with the podcast, we are going to discuss more and more about these non-tariff barriers that each product has to, has to get or go through, and we are going to see the key differences between these products. Okay, also something that we forgot to mention is going to be very short, as the main goal of this podcast is not talking about tariff barriers. It is going to be free trade agreements, which is also that something that really is important in these trade aspects. It's something important to have in mind. If you're importing or exporting any product, looking out for these free trade agreements is important.
I think Jacobo is right. It's something extremely important to bear in mind. Now that, for example, I was talking that the MFN for the ROM to the United Kingdom is 2.37%, but now taking into account that Colombia has a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, that bound tariff goes to 0%. So let's say that Colombia can have a comparative advantage in comparison with other WTO member countries because of the free trade agreement, which gives also the company that is going to export this type of products an economic advantage over other exporters. Now, what is really important in these free trade agreements and how can we apply for these benefits? There is something called the rules of origin or the originating status. What does this consist of? We have to prove that the product that we're going to export is originating in certain percentage of or a certain part of that country that applies for the FTA. In the case of the coffee infused spirits, there are 100% Colombian because both the liquor and the coffee is 100% Colombian, which makes the product consequently 100% Colombian. Now, how can we prove or how do we get the certificate of origin in order to apply for the FTA benefit? This is through the DIAN, which is the Dirección de Impuestos y Aduanas Nacional, which you go there, you show your product, you fill up some forms, and then you get a certificate of origin. So that is something very important.
Okay, and so yeah, this that of what Santiago just talked about is actually something very interesting because we are going to face arguably our first non-tariff barrier. For example, as he mentioned, the coffee infused spirits are 100% Colombian, yet the perfumes are 40% from a product that comes from India. While the most favored nation tariff for this product is zero, in other cases it could actually prove to be a very complex issue. So here we face our first non-tariff barrier. Or what do you think, Santiago, about this? Do you consider a rule of origin to be a non-tariff barrier? How do you get over this?
Well, my personal opinion is the following. Applying for rules of origin is, well, the objective of complying with rules of origin is applying for FTAs, or which means that applying for FTAs gives a benefit for the bound tariff or the MFN. So let's say I comply with the rules of origin, so I don't apply, which gives me an advantage in a tariff barrier. But if I don't comply, I still have the MFN. So most of WTO member countries are going to have the same tariff barrier. So I personally don't think that rules of origin is inside of the topic of non-tariff barrier.
Well, that's actually a very good opinion. I in some part agree, in some not, because I still think that this is a bureaucratic process to make products less beneficial with trade agreements. Yet I do agree with the thing that this is more like not seen so much due to the fact that it's to protect actual trade agreements and not overcome and saying, okay, I'm making this product with 99% of Chinese materials and I'm saying it is Colombian. So I think it can be ambiguous that, but yeah. Okay, now diving deeper into the non-tariff barriers, tell us more about your product and which non-tariff barriers it can face, and also which private certifications it can apply for, and what do you think about it?
Sure. Well, for the coffee infused spirits, there are some interesting, let's say, certifications that you will need to get in order to export the product to the United Kingdom. The first one I would like to talk about is the duty stamps. When you get these alcohol bottles and the type of alcohol that we are exporting that is under the HS code 2208, which is alcohol by volume level over 33%. The bottles need some duty stamps. What does these duty stamps consist of? There are pink stamps that consist that the alcohol is for the United Kingdom market, and they already pay an excise duty, because away from the tariff there is an excise duty that the alcohol needs to pay when it is imported into the United Kingdom. Why is this done? To protect the local product. So if the imported product has a higher price, people will tend to pay more to pay for the local product. So this, let's say that protects the local market with the local product. So when you pay the excise duty, you need to ask for these duty stamps, which are certifying that are for the UK market. If you don't have those stamps, you are not getting the product into the United Kingdom market. Another interesting point about the mandatory certification is the alcohol wholesaler registration. When you are importing these products into the United Kingdom, you need a registration that is given by the HMRC, which stands for His Majesty Revenue and Customs of the United Kingdom. This entity gives you the duty stamps and the alcohol wholesaler registration, which is just like a permission to wholesale the alcohol and distribute it for consumption inside the United Kingdom. In some cases, not for this one, but in some cases there are products in which the government has a quota. Let's say that you cannot import more than X quantity of products, but in this case we are not having this kind of restriction. Now, getting a little bit deeper into labeling, the United Kingdom takes very seriously the health warnings, which means, like, for example, warning, if you're an adult, you cannot consume more than 1.7 units per day of this bottle, which units can be 20 to 30 milliliters or even less. So in terms of mandatory certification or international regulations that are non-tariff related, this will be the most important ones. Now, diving into private standards or private certifications that can be granted in order to facilitate market entry, I would like to talk about our sustainability certification. For this product, the most important one that you can get is called EcoVadis. EcoVadis consists of a platform that you can get either a ranking of one of the most companies in your segment that is sustainable. There are gold, silver, bronze, and it depends on how sustainable you are. You get the badge, gold, bronze, right? Or you can just get the certification that you're going sustainable practices. Well, as it is, food and beverages sustainability is very important, and it generates consumer trust. And this one takes about 2 to 3 months to get. So I think it's a very important certification to get. Now, other private standard I would like to talk about is the International Taste Institute. That you take the beverage to a panel of experts of the International Taste Institute, and they test the quality, color, texture of the beverage, and they give you a certification if it has a superior taste. For example, I would like to talk about Ron Viejo de Caldas, which is something, a product called a Colombian product that applied for this certification, and they got it, and their exports are increasing.
In the world, they are a famous company here in Colombia. I know many people which prefer Ron Viejo de Caldas, and something you told before. Part of the importance of this service is protecting these local consumers. For example, here in Colombia, we are going to buy Ron Viejo de Caldas. We're not going to buy some rum that comes from the United Kingdom. So I think it is similar for them. They are going to buy rum made from them. This is going to be seen more as a luxury. And one of the things mentioned before is tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Their main goal is protecting local industries.
Correct.
To a point, tariffs are bad. Yeah, high tariffs will make inflation greater, will hinder free market overall. But I think that for certain markets, a little of non-tariff barriers, it's necessary, because if not, someone is going to be making a much cheaper rum, and they will just be dumping it here. And that's the reason there are anti-dumping laws and why people want to protect their products.
Completely correct.
So I'll talk about my product. You can take any opinion of it. Perfumes are so much less complex. It is crazy. The biggest non-tariff barrier, in my opinion, is just going through customs. That I don't know your product how we did it, but it's one of the highest issues it has
Yeah.
to put it away. Um, Also, complying with FDA standards that do because they are very natural perfumes. They don't use prohibited chemicals. You don't need warnings. The only warnings you need is don't spray on eyes. Something very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Listing ingredients, having certain font sizes, and it being in English.
Okay.
So I think it's comparing these two products is a very good contrast of how certain products will have big barriers and some others maybe won't. Also talking about the private certifications, you see your product sustainability,
Superior taste.
superior taste, while my product or these perfumes, you see big perfumes, they don't have certifications. It's not common.
I think, in my opinion, that's why, because, well, most of perfumes or most of perfume brands are already brands with a lot of prestige
Yeah,
and a lot of
yeah.
fame. So I would like you to go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, so you see that what you said is very valid, very true. Perfume brands base their prestige on their name, on their brand. You're going to Gucci to buy a Gucci perfume. You're buying Gucci.
And you don't look at the certifications.
You don't look at the certifications. You
Yeah,
don't care about
right.
that. So I think that's so interesting. But it also creates a great opportunity because, okay, I am the only one in the market that has a vegan certification, which is one of the research, Leaping Bunny, a no, I mean, sorry, that was a non-cruelty. I have the vegan.org certification and I have a organic certification. No other perfume is going to get that. Obviously, getting those certifications can be a more complex deal. For example, getting the vegan and cruelty-free is not that hard because it is a change that is wanted, and these organizations are really invested in helping companies, market themselves and market the cruelty-free and vegan markets. The organic will be a little bit more complex, but I think it's something very interesting. Okay, so Santiago, with all this in mind, tell me what is the strategy you think is the best for you for the product you are representing?
Okay, so I think the best strategy for applying in when you're going to export these products in terms of regulations and certifications is prioritizing what takes more time or what is more important and what is extremely or mandatory, right? So, what will I do or what will I recommend? I will recommend prioritizing what the government of the United Kingdom demands. For example, the rules of origin to apply for the FTA benefit, the HMRC duty stamps, the alcohol wholesaler registration. Why? Because we already have this, we can already take the product to the United Kingdom market. So prioritizing these factors will give better advantage. Then you can go prioritizing. For example, you can go with the health labels, which are also mandatory, and then you go to the private standards. So
Yeah,
I will think that will be the recommendation.
I think that's a very good strategy, because in a world with so many non-tariff barriers, with a market with so many non-tariff barriers, it is going to be just impossible to take all at once. So I think
Correct.
going one by one, seeing which takes the most time, is going to be very effective.
Yeah.
For a product that has so much less non-tariff barriers, I think that the best thing is just being organized with your
I
product.
think in a product like in the perfumes, if big companies are doing it, it's because it has been working with the passing
Yeah,
of time.
no, and
If you comply with what's mandatory, then
Yeah,
you don't really need the other
you need
things.
to comply with the FDA. That's basically not using certain chemicals, having good labels, having every document needed for the with the customs border patrol, and you're pretty much golden. You won't need any more trouble. So I think that it's not a hard strategy.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, also now analyze also, I think it's important to see the possible risks that you think a non-tariff barrier could represent, maybe what a having or not having a private certification can
Yeah.
impact your product.
Okay, so well, I think that using or applying the strategy that we have been recommending, the risks are extremely reduced. But these risks represent if I don't comply with these requirements, this can represent a huge loss of time and money for the company. Why? Because if you don't comply and you take your product to the United Kingdom market and you notice that you're not complying with something that's mandatory, then the product gets back and at
Yeah,
least like
and
1 or 2 months.
I think that goes about the same. I think for my product is the same.
Correct.
The biggest like risk is not being able to take the product, and if you mess up the customs border, they're going to send your product back. They're gonna retain it, and that's awful. I think that for alcohol, it's obviously much more complex because for perfumes you don't need health certificates. You don't need the king. I don't remember that, but those certifications.
The registrations, right?
You don't need that much. For perfumes, it is much easier, and I think that you can mitigate the risk so much better in products that certifications are important but not crucial, because there are other products out there
correct.
that if you don't get those certifications and you don't get everything, you're going to be
You lose
absolutely
everything.
destroyed.
Exactly.
You'll lose everything.
In time and money.
So I think for certain products the mitigation is much better. Okay, so I think this was like a good overall summary of both products. I think comparing, what are your final thoughts on like the comparison?
Well, I think that it depends a lot of the type of product you're exporting, that you can see how the product I'm working with requires a lot of non-tariff barriers. As the one that Jacobo is working with doesn't really need non-tariff barriers or doesn't really work with. The only thing is really important is the FDA, I would
and
think.
also I think that even like my product has a much less requirements than alcohol, but also if you see alcohol compared, I don't know, to cattle genetics. Let's say they need to go through SPS, TBT, private certifications.
I think it gets a little bit more complex.
Yeah, I know, and it goes upwards and upwards, and this is an international trade is a long process.
Yes,
and
correct.
and depending on the markets, depending on the product, there are countries that are so protectionist.
Totally
There
right.
are, the United States is kind of on the simpler side, but you will find
I think that
countries.
the United States is a country that likes to promote trade, as well as the United Kingdom.
Yeah, but you'll find countries that really want to screw you over.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this was a non-nonsense straight podcast by Santiago and I, Jacobo. We are very thankful for your time, and we hope you have a great day.
Stay tuned.